Yesterday I was like very much in the zone. Today I was like a little less.
That's natural, isn't it? There's
happens.
always ups and downs.
But I had
right?
such a high up, and today I just
You wanted it to continue, I hear.
yeah. So
Yeah.
tomorrow's and I'll try again just as hard.
Yeah. It's we pray 3 times a day, so you get definitely talk about second chance, the
That's
third
true.
chance, or the fourth.
That's true.
But as long as you keep tabs on it, and start the show, it'll get better and better.
I have to say, I always love it when you have sheets.
Good.
It always excites me.
Excellent. Okay, well, I got lots of them. I've got lots of goodies for you. Unfortunately, there's not so many guys here right now, but hopefully they'll catch up. But we've got to get started. So what I have here is 3 genealogical charts. This is the first one. I'll just keep some for me. Put those in the middle if anybody comes. And it really goes from Adam all the way to this week's Parsha. Let's take a look at each chart. And yeah, please.
Okay. So, Adam and Chava birthed Seth, Abel, and Cain. Okay?
Well, that's what I see.
How did Seth and Cain have children if there were no other women?
Good question. So it's clear that the
Divine intervention.
The mothers are not mentioned. It's obvious that there were women as well, and they must have had some other children to have women to bear the children, the next generation. So, but the Torah didn't mention them. There are some women mentioned later on, here and there, but it's really few and far between. Like, of course, you could see the Lemech had 2 wives. It says here. If you go down to the chart on the right-hand side, Lemech, Ada, and Tzila, because there's a famous poem that he wrote, and the Torah speaks about their family. So when it's relevant, the women are mentioned, and when they have a role, which of course, every woman has a role, and every person has a role. But the truth is, if you take a look at this chart, do you think there were only 70 people in the entire generation? These are not. So it's not telling us everybody. It's trying to give us a message from this genealogical chart, which of course is based on the Psukim. This is all stuff from the Psukim. Of course, there are many midrashim which elaborate upon what exactly happened between them. But this basically goes from Adam, the first man as it's described in the Torah, to the Tower of Babel. You see that in the top right corner. It's supposed to be a picture of the Tower of Babel, which they built in the generation. It's called Peleg. The last guy there is called Peleg, and the Chazal say because Biyamav niflega haaretz, the society was divided up. The Tower of Babel, the different languages and all that God scattered them so that they shouldn't be too centralized. So this is the first swipe, we like to call it. It's the first swipe at civilization. Of course, the big break is Noach in the middle. No, it doesn't have a picture of a flood, but you can see that he had 3 sons and the extension. Now, what's amazing is the number 70. You see that at the top of your page. And what is the number 70 used for in Judaism usually?
It refers to there being 70 nations of the world.
Exactly, 70 nations of the world. Well, it's based on this chart right here. If you count them all, you actually get to the number 70. And also, what else was 70 in Judaism?
I know that the primary synagogue of the Lubavitchers is at 770.
770 Eastern Parkway.
Yes. I thought you were going to say something about coins.
That's
some ancient denomination.
It's actually quite amazing that it works out that way.
I think the 100 lira note was introduced in 1970. I think
it is a famous number in Judaism. The Sanhedrin was 70 members of the Sanhedrin. 70 is, of course, there's 7 days of the week, where 7 is a big number in Judaism, of course, from Shabbat. And then 10 times that just means, 7 means a complete cycle. And then 10 times that is like a complete cycle times 10. Yeah.
Wasn't the Great Assembly 120?
Correct. So the Sanhedrin was something other than the Great Assembly.
Those are two very separate.
Two
things.
separate
Great
things.
Sanhedrin
Yeah.
is like the Supreme Court, maybe.
Yeah, maybe
It's like the higher court.
It's a high court. It's a court of Jewish law, whereas the 120 men of the Great Assembly were more broad than that. It was sort of like a political leadership, as well as the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin also, in the different periods, had political clout as well. So the division is not so clear, but you're right that 120 is also a cool number. Of course, that's 12 times 10, right? 12 being number of the tribes, and we'll get to that on the next two sheets. But first, let's look at the number 70, so you can see it's why it became to be this classic number of the nations of the world, because it's also 7 times 10. But also, when you look at the Torah's list pretty precisely, you see the different branches. What else pops out at you? Who remembers who was the longest, the oldest man, the man who lived the longest? Maybe you guys heard this trivia question before.
Yeah.
You know, any of
Guy
the
from Japan, right?
actually in the Bible, because in the days, the way the Torah describes it, the people used to live very, very long, and then around Avraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov's time, they were still living to over 100, 175. Avraham was when he died. I don't remember Yaakov. I think 186 was Amram. I'm not sure exactly.
Okay.
You have a.
Why would someone name their sons Yuval and Yaval, respectively? Senseless.
I have a better question.
If you don't know the language, it's
No, no.
senseless. But first answer my question. Who lived the longest? Metushelach. You see it there? 10 generations or 6 generations after Adam, Metushelach. 969 years. Again, I don't know exactly what that means. In terms of Yaval and Yuval, I imagine it has something to do with a theme. That there's meaning to these names. We don't know all of them. But what was your question, Jacob?
A little off topic, but I'm curious, so feel free, we can answer after class. Like, for example, some names here, like Nimrod or Ophir, are like semi-popular nowadays. But like other names here, like I've never heard anyone named Methuselah or like Togarma or whatever. Like, why are some names more popular than others? Is there like an actual like reason, or just the way that it is?
Yeah, the people call names for a reason. The reasons can be varied. Biblical names are cool. People like to connect to their roots, and that's why people do look to the Torah and to the different characters. Usually, most people, go with the heroes. There's many Avrahams, many Yitzchaks and Yaakovs and Yosefs and Davids and Shlomos and Moshes, but very few of the anti-heroes are people that they're just names. And as a matter of fact, if you look at the chart, most of these names are non-Jews, right? Because Avram's going to be coming out of Aver, which is towards the end. But all these other names, they're all children of Ham, which is not the Jew, right? The children of Egypt and Put and Canaan.
Jews.
Pretty much, yeah. The Jews are the descendants from Shem and Aver. You might have you see their names in the middle, Shem and Aver.
Yes.
They say that they were like the continuing the chain of prophecy from Adam to Noah, who we know spoke to God. Shem and Aver, it doesn't say they spoke to God, but our tradition, the oral tradition, tells us that they were students of Noah, and then they taught Avraham, so that they're like a connecting line. Whereas all these other ones, they're other nations of the world. This is a little bit of a historiography. Of course, the Greek nations are all children of Yefet, of Yefet, as you can see there on the right-hand side.
So Yefet is Greek.
Yeah.
But okay,
Thank you.
so
problem.
you say that people generally
But I'm
don't
not
name their
finished
kids
yet. Once
the
again.
anti-heroes. Okay.
So there is, however, like every culture, there's the anti-culture. There's the pushback.
Rebels.
So rebels, yeah. So Jews, as I said, traditionally they go with the heroes, but for example, there were the early Zionists just about 100 years ago. They were very much into being biblical, but not rabbinic. And so they looked for biblical names which were not the standard names. So you might have heard of there's some Israelis called Nimrod. Now Nimrod is a character which, as you can hear it in the name, Mem Reish Daled means to rebel. So he was the rebellious one who actually tried to put Avraham in a burning furnace. So he was not a positive character if you ask the rabbinic Judaism. And so those secular Zionists some of them who wanted to say we're biblical but we're not rabbinic, they chose after those kind of names. Like Canaan, also Canaan. That's like the land of Canaan. We're supposed to conquer and get rid of Canaan, take them out of the land. And then some people name their children those kind of biblical names, particularly to make a statement. So yes, people do use particular names, but the traditional ones are the more essential. Yeah, go ahead.
People will literally name their daughters Leah, who is described in Bereshit as being ugly.
Yeah, that's something I thought interesting.
So she's never called ugly.
She's not ugly. It just says that her eyes are tender.
Yes.
What does that mean? It means that she cried a lot.
So,
Anyways,
We don't know what it means. It says that Einei Le'ah Rakot.
Okay, let's focus.
Eyes are tender.
But anyways, Leah, besides
Think of her
that
personality
description,
or something, okay?
besides that description, she goes on to be the mother of half of the Jewish people, right? 6 children out of her womb. So
She does have some inequality.
that definitely, and who's buried next to Yaakov in the Marat HaMachpelah, if not Leah? So it's not the only thing the Torah has to say about Leah. And as I said, it's kind of up to interpretation what it means that her eyes were weak or soft eyes. Soft eyes can actually mean something else. So, okay, you had a question?
No, I had a realization, but it's okay.
Okay, that's awesome.
You educated me, and I realized something.
Amazing. Okay, so we're looking at the first chart. If you can hand Shua. Shua, I noticed you came yesterday and today. You're joining our class
For now.
for now.
This one's trying to find me something else to do, but until then, I'm in here.
Got it.
You don't like the other class?
No.
Please. That's not a good question to ask in public in front of everybody. That's really not.
Sorry.
he just likes this class.
Let's
I do like
talk about something else. Let's talk about the class, please.
Sir. So in the Tanakhic narrative, what was the
Please sit down. Join us. Sit down. Take a deep breath before you start talking. You're joining something in the middle. You don't first listen, then talk. Okay. So we are studying, as you can see, a chart. The first chart. I'm going to give you 3 charts today. Jacob gets very excited whenever I bring you charts, so I try to do it once in a while, just to change things up. The first one, as you can see, goes from Adam to Peleg, which, how many generations is that? Can we count? How many?
To where? Oh, to Peleg?
There's actually a Mishnah in Masechet Avot. Where's Masechet Avot?
14.
14
generations.
14. And from the Mishnah, Masechet Avot says, otherwise known as Pirkei Avot, it says that there are 10 generations between Adam and Noah, and then another 10 generations from Noah to Avraham. On this page we have, you can see there's a big little dividing line in the middle. Between Adam and Noah is the 10. Was Noah 10th generation? Can you count that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so that works. Now to get to Avram, we're going to have to go to the next chart. But because we only have from Noah, we have 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the next 5 are going to be in the next chart. Any questions about this chart before we move off to the next page? Yes.
You said 10 generations in between, but it's from Adam to Noah. It's 10 generations inclusive.
Correct.
But you said 10 in between.
We're going to get to the next one. The first 10 is 10. You got that?
Okay.
Inclusive. We'll talk about the next 10 when we get to the next page. I said it before you came. If you look at the top of the page, there's one picture on the page, which is supposed to be
Oh, the Tower of Peleg.
Tower of Babel. And Peleg was named. The Torah says he was called that because during his time, the civilization got divided. Peleg means a portion, a section. So it got divided up. The door Haflaga from his name. Haflaga. That means the generation of scattering, of dispersion. So this is.
And who was Eber?
Also, just before you walked in,
Oh.
I mentioned Shem and Aver, the two guys that had our tradition tells us they had a Beit Midrash. They had some kind of a school for prophecy, school for passing on the traditions that they received from Adam to Noah and down to Shem and Aver, and from there to, we're going to see in a minute, to Avraham. Yes.
So is
Hirsch.
what is the relationship between Aver and like Haber, Haberim? What's the relationship?
Nothing. This is Ayin and this is Het. Het is an Ayin. They're both gutturals, but as far as I understand, they're different names. Different names, different meanings. Aver, you know what? There's actually each one of these people here, these names mentioned, as you can see, obviously, Mitzrayim, it became the nation of Mitzrayim. You see that on the left-hand side, right? And we said Ashur, just to the right of Shem. Ashur became the Assyrian nation, right? They're all, and Lud, they're Lydians, and Aram, the Arameans. You've heard of Aramaic, right? You know, Aram used to be the lingua franca.
Lavan is an Aramean.
Lavan, that's it. It was an Aramean, and who was an Aver? You asked about the name Aver, right? In the middle of your page. Who is known as?
Avraham.
Exactly. Avraham the Ha'ivri. That means he comes from Aver. Of course, Chazal has an interesting perush that it means the other side. Avram was on the other side of the rest of the world. There's a process here of separating the Jewish people from the. What did I have before? Do I have another one here? Here is the time to mention. I was going to pull out an orange, but I don't have an orange. Right, the Kuzari, we talked about the book, the Kuzari. You learned it a little bit with Rav Listman, or
Yes, a little bit.
Excellent. So he has a metaphor where he calls it the fruit and the husk, meaning that the way the Torah describes this process of getting from the first man Adam to Avraham, the first Jew. And even after that, with Avram's children, there's always a process of keeping the kernel, keeping the fruit, and then the husks get separated off. As you can see, all these 70 nations from them, we hear nothing much except they become the the foils for our forefathers' activities described in the Torah. And so the depiction of Avram is Avraham Ivri, because he was on one side of the river, for example, and the rest of the world was on the other side of the river. There's sort of a separation between the chosen people and the one who they get chosen from.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions here on the page?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Under Yafet, it's got Yavan. Is that like Greece?
There you go. That's Greece. That's what Moshe, you were writing down Greece, or saying that. Who was writing down that Greece comes from there? It's Yavan. Yavan in Hebrew is Greece, right there. It says It says Javan, and it says Japhet, because the ancient system was to put a J instead of a Y. But Yavan is there. That's right. What other nations?
Yavan in Hebrew.
Yud Vav Nun. Yes.
Oh, just lines.
So
That's right.
I'm looking at Ham and Shem. Shem is Hebrews. What do you say? Hebrew?
Well, Hebrew comes from Aver.
Okay, yeah, Semitic.
Aver comes from Hebrew.
Why,
Semitic, exactly. Shem, Semitic.
then why
exactly.
does Ham, all their names have it in it, but all the from Shem and Ever, no, I don't see anything Semitic.
Yeah.
Semites. Yeah, like
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
see
yeah.
Shem.
So
no,
by the way,
nothing
this
Shem and Semites.
definition of Semites,
Semites.
being Jews is imprecise, as you can see, of course, because the Semites were a much larger group. It includes all the generations until we get to Avraham. We're going to get to. I'll give this out now. The next page. Try to keep them in your folder so that they don't get lost. See if you need any more. And so you'll see that really we should be called Avramites or anti-Avramites. But even that's imprecise, because we know that Avram had a few children, and only the children of Yitzchak become, right? Not all the children of Ishmael. So whoever came up with this name for, being Jewish and anti-Jewish is Semites and anti-Semites was a little bit imprecise historically.
So Semite comes from Shem.
Yeah, I think clearly. But the question of whether they're ites or not ites, that's just English. I think sometimes it's a different form of the name, calling it the name of the people, the name of the people that are following that leader. So in plural, some of them are in plural, some of them are in singular. Where was Canaan from? Just last question on chart number 1. Which means that when the Jewish people later get told to go over and take over the land of Canaan, but we're taking it out of the hands of these. Right there was the 3-part division of the children of Noach. The world was divided into 3 children of Noach, Shem, and Yafet. So, question is, we always know that the land of Israel is right in the middle of everything.
Yes.
Because the Arameans, Shem, they were in charge of, you can see, Aram, Ashur, that's the Middle East, or particularly Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and then, of course, Ham and his children are Mitzrayim, and they're the south, sort of northern Africa. And what's right in the middle of the land of Israel, what we call today the land of Israel. So this fight over
the land of Canaan.
Right, so it was called the land of Canaan, and God said it shouldn't be the land of Canaan, it should be the land of the Abraham's children are going to get to settle the land of Israel.
Based on
What we
that,
call today the land of Israel.
it seems like Yafet, right back, he clearly went.
He's out of things. Yeah,
He went way up.
Greece,
Out of
Europe.
the way, right? Greece and Europe.
Yeah.
Ham stayed in Africa, and Shem just kind of had nothing until Abraham showed up.
No. He had all of the Fertile Crescent, which we sort of showed you another day. Remember that chart where I showed you the first? I gave you a book. I can give one to you.
I noticed there's also someone named Ashkenaz.
Did you get the book, Hirsch?
I'm asking a question.
Did you get this book? You were here that day? No? I gave you a collector's item.
Yeah,
It's a very
so
cool book of maps.
Ashkenaz is the Hebrew version of the Hebrew name for.
So is
That's
Ashkenaz
right.
the ancestor of the Germans?
So yes. Where do you see Ashkenaz on the page?
Ashkenaz is the son of Gomer, who is the son of Yafet.
Excellent. So you see that that's where the origin of this term for the Germanic people. They're called Ashkenaz in ancient medieval times. There was Germania was used, but less so than Ashkenaz. Ashkenaz is what we called them. And that's basically all these are European nations. Correct. I can't remember what I was saying now, but let's move to chart 2. Okay, everybody have chart 2 in front of you? Anybody need another one? You got one? Okay, so chart 2, as you can see, from the scattered generations of the patriarchs, how many? Count them now, Moshe. From Shem to Avraham. As I said, the Mishnah novel says 10 generations. Do you have a number 2? No?
What do you mean today?
Chart number 2.
It is 10, starting from Shem and.
No, I know.
Mitzrayim, so
Oh.
that's 10.
Pass this down to him, please.
So it's right there.
Okay, I see how it
No.
works. Oh,
No.
okay, this makes sense. Okay.
Do you have chart number 2?
I do have a chart.
Sure, do you have both of them?
Yeah, I've got both.
Oh, you have both? Okay,
Yeah,
just
everyone's
okay, good. Okay, so you're seeing, how many are there?
10,
10, including?
including Shem, but not including Noah.
No, perfect.
that-
There it is.
that's-
So there's
where
10
is-
and 10.
What I was confused about, I thought it was like the generations in between Adam and Noah, but no, it's
Inclusive.
is Adam to Noah is 10,
And then
Shem
Shem
to
to
Abraham is 10
Abraham is
people.
10. Abraham's the 10th. Good. So, which is again another just a form to look at history and say these are two transitions, if you will, from one world to the next. So let's look. What do you see on table 2? You have questions, Hirsch? What did you want to comment?
So this genealogy charts and how the 3 sons of Noah became the nations of the world. Was this an early attempt of anthropology or something?
Correct.
Interesting.
I believe that the Torah is giving us messages by telling us this. It's clearly, as I said before, there are thousands and maybe hundreds of thousands of other people around. There's a very sketchy, 70 nations. It's an archetypical number of, multitude. 7 times 10, as I said, and then 10, and then another 10. It means it's a transition to another era in terms of God's message to the world. Obviously, there could have been many other eras, but the Torah is describing it this way. And since it's this week's parsha, the genealogical table number 2, let's take a look. Avram's wives.
Many.
That was last week's parsha.
Gotcha.
Not so many. How many wives did Avram have?
One and a concubine.
Good. Well, 2 actually.
According to
2 and a
Hagar,
concubine.
he actually married Hagar.
Well, the question is, who is Hagar? If you look on our chart on the all the way to the left, you see that Avram's concubine was Hagar, and we know that tradition tells us that she was from Mitzrayim. Do you remember where Mitzrayim was?
Yeah,
in the previous chart.
When he went there for the famine and left.
Yes, but on the last chart there was a person called Mitzrayim.
Yeah.
One of the children of Ham.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right? It's just saying there's a little bit of a combination here of the 2 chains of civilization.
Yeah.
The Shem chain and the Ham chain. Avram marrying Hagar is not just he found a woman to have a baby with. It's not just a surrogate mother. This is a significant combination of 2 civilizations. In any case, their child Ishmael, as you can see, has generations. But then there was another wife of Avraham. We had it at the end of last week's parsha.
Oh, Keturah.
Keturah.
The
Some
Midrashim
people
say
say
that's
she was the same woman, right? Some people, but here the text doesn't say it was the same woman. And as you can see, Avraham had a brother.
Mm-hmm.
Who was his brother? Haran. Very good. And you can see Haran had these children, and some of them connected and had children which mixed with the children of Keturah, Avram and Keturah's children and grandchildren. Now on this page, I would like you to look not at the number 70, but look for the number 12. How many children did Ishmael have?
A lot.
Nope.
Well,
Good guess.
He had
13.
Right. So 13 should be 12. Does he really have 13? Is that?
No, it's
Yeah.
12.
No, I might have miscounted.
Nevayot, Kedar, Ad Be'er.
There's 13.
Sam, Nishma, Tuma, Masa, Hadar, Tema, Yitzur, Nafish, Kedar.
What the heck?
And Basmat. No, Basmat's a woman. It's 12. Because Basmat is the daughter. Who later, it's mentioned because later it says that Esav married Basmat. And that's why she is there. But it should be darkened out or something. It should be a different color. In the original, it was a little bit of a different color.
Well, it
There's
says
actually 12 children.
it says that Esau married
First, Ada and Ohalivama, correct?
and then it says in parentheses below Ada's name, Basmath.
You're right. So
There's 2 Basmath.
there's 2 Basmats, exactly. And it says in just the end of last week's parsha that Esav saw that his father Yitzchak didn't like the Canaanite women that he took, Ohalivama and Ada, and he took a 3rd wife from the children of Avraham. And who he took was Basmat or Machalat. Some people say it's the same person. So this was his attempt to getting back into the right chain. Now there was another. How many children did Yitzchak have? Ishmael had 12, right? We agreed on that. And how many children did Yitzchak have?
2.
Exactly. Yaakov and Esav. And it's actually difficult. Because what did God come to Avram and promise him? Numerous times.
Your children shall be as numerous as the sands of the seas and the stars of the heavens.
That's right. And you're going to be a great nation. And he sees that the children of Ishmael, he's pretty fruitful. But Yitzchak, where God designates him, first he tells him to kill him. You're not going to have a lot of children if he's dead. But secondly, even when he does live and survives the Akedah, he only has 2 children. What's 2 children? We're trying to build a tribe here. We're trying to build a nation, a great nation. You can imagine
Time
that.
to default back to Ishmael.
Maybe that's why Avraham says, Avraham, at least says, one of the psukim say, Avraham says to God, at least Ishmael will still live. And God says, no, Yitzchak's the man. Yitzchak's going to be the one that's going to create this great nation. But they don't see it in their lifetimes. And so Jews have to know how to wait. But there's another set of 12. I wanted to look at the end of last week's parsha. It says that the children of Keturah were, how many were the children of Keturah?
6.
Now count the grandchildren. Utz, Buz, Kemuel. Everybody see where I'm reading?
8. There's 8 there, and then out of Betuel.
Right. 8 plus 6 is 14. So it's already more than 12 if we count them all. But somehow the last one, Pildash and Yidlaf, somehow we're connected to Milcah and Nachor. So I don't know exactly how that works. Were they the grandchildren of... Oh, these are the grandchildren of Milcah and Nachor. Excuse me, this is 8 and 4. If you look at the children of Milcah and Nachor on the chart, you have to really follow the lines closely. If you go to Uz, Buz, Kemuel, Chesed, Chazor, Betuel, Pildash, Yidlaf, and Tevach, Gacham, Tachash, and Ma'acha, those are 12. The children of Nachor. Nachor was a brother of Avraham as well.
Right.
And so that's the brother that has 12. So everybody's having 12 children. Avraham, who gets the special promise and covenant with God, he only has one child, really, Yitzchak.
Wow.
And Yitzchak only has 2 children. And only where do we get to 12? It's later on. It's on chart number 3. But basically, you could see that this is the Torah tells us these numbers of children and the children so that we should count them. We should notice this, that the creation of the Jewish people was a longer process. Here, take this chart number 3, please, and pass them around.
By the time the nation of Israel comes on the scene, all these other nations have been well established. They have land, they have armies.
Exactly.
And the nation of Israel is just this puny little group of kids.
Right. And there you can understand why, perhaps, the Exodus, the Jewish people really became large and became a great nation only in Egypt.
Well, once they were in Egypt, they started reproducing like rabbits.
I'll take that in a positive light.
Yeah.
Rabbits are cute.
But also, the amount of Jews Israelites that left Egypt was it like a third, an eighth? There's a bunch of different opinions on it, but they were a lot bigger than.
We have a number.
I have a number. I'm saying the original number.
Could have been much
So a
more.
lot of them
Could have been
died
much
during-
more. Yeah.
during the Machon.
Yeah. Right. In any case, let's take a look at where are the 12 children of Yaakov? From his 4 wives. You see them. This is full of what the parsha is full with this. You can show this chart to Rav Lissman afterwards, just going over the parsha with you.
Moshe Rabbeinu's mother's name is Amram or Yocheved?
Yocheved's his mother.
So, how many children did Yaakov have?
12
Oh.
sons at least.
Right. And what was Yehuda's?
Tamar.
Yehuda's daughter was Tamar, and who was his
Daughter.
in-laws?
Tamar was his daughter-in-law.
Right. And who was his in-law?
Shua.
Shua.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Sorry, who
I
was
know
that?
it because it comes up
Oh, I
every
see that.
year in the parsha.
Shua. But it actually eventually becomes a Jewish name. She was a non-Jewish woman from the Canaanites who were living in Canaan, where these 12 tribes were trying to develop. The greatest danger was that they would marry the locals, and then they disappear and assimilate into the local population.
So what do? They go
So
and marry
God somehow made them escape to Egypt and grow as a nation in a separate area of Egypt. What is it called?
Oh,
You haven't gotten there yet, but you remember
Goshen.
Goshen. And that's the only way. That was God's way to ensure that the Jewish people would remain, their own tribe. And there were a few attempts of mixing. One was exactly what we just talked about, Yehuda and Tamar. Tamar was the daughter of Shua, who was a local leader, and this was very dangerous. Although, paradoxically, somehow Mashiach is a descendant of Yehuda and
That's a
Tamar.
really messed up story.
It's very, very fascinating. They say that ultimately, the miraculous leadership comes from the strangest place.
Yes, it does.
One other attempt of mixing between the Jews and the locals, what was that? It's coming up in a few weeks.
Oh, it was
Parsha.
with Shem, right?
That's right. That's
When they
right.
tried
The
to take
daughters.
Dinah.
Right. That's right. Dinah was the people of Shem tried to get close, and they even offered a pact. We're going to mingle with you. Let's assimilate together. The people of Shem and the people of Yaakov, Israel, whatever you want to call it, and that had a very bitter end.
Oh, yeah.
Right. At least for them. Yes.
Sorry, can you just clarify one more time for me? Who is Shua, not this Shua, but on the chart, and Tamar? One more time, please. Yeah, so like I see,
Tamar was the daughter of Shua.
how is it like on the chart? It's like Shua and Tamar on the same like.
It's a mistake. It's just not clear.
Okay, so Tamar.
It's because Tamar married Yehuda's children, and then Yehuda eventually marries Tamar. That's why it's muddled.
So
We'll
Tamar.
get to it in Genesis 46, as you can see.
Tamar is the daughter and the wife of Yehuda.
Yes.
Interesting.
Daughter-in-law.
Daughter-in-law.
And Moshe,
Daughter
And-
and law.
Moshe's
It was the first
father
form
was
of
very
levirate
advanced.
marriage.
Yeah, no, this is.
It's a form of, when all of her husbands died, one after the other, this was the custom that when the husband dies, the brother marries.
And
And she went ahead and said, well, if the brothers are not going to marry me because they were being withheld, so then I need to have children. So she went to her father-in-law and had a child. That's the story in Genesis 46. We'll read about it soon.
Moshe's father.
Shua. Sorry, who's Shua? Sorry.
Tamar's father.
Tamar's father. An interesting little triangle we have there.
Yes.
Okay.
Moshe's father
Moshe.
married his aunt.
Yeah, it's a mitzvah. To marry your aunt.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's a prohibition to marry your aunt.
I just want to
No,
clarify.
Great team.
It's a prohibition. In those days, obviously, it wasn't applicable yet, but it looks like looks like he married his aunt, according to this. Okay, so we see here that going through the generations, obviously, what do we have? The 12 tribes, 70 descendants. Do you see 70 on this page?
Maybe.
Because the Torah, we didn't say it before. When I asked you what was the number 70, and you said there's 70 nations, and I said there's a 70 in the Sanhedrin. The 70, most famous, is the number of the Jews who went down to Egypt.
Right.
From 12, they became 70, and then that's like the number of the totality of a tribe, of a people. And 70 members of the Jewish tribe who went down to Egypt with Yaakov and his children. And they're all mentioned here, they're all listed. If you're quick, you can count them now. But ultimately, the Torah does it at the end of the book of Bereshit.
Sorry,
it says, went down to
I
Egypt.
want to rectify the mistake I made. It's not a mitzvah to marry your aunt. It's a mitzvah to marry your niece.
That's
No,
something else. That goes back to Avraham.
It's also prohibited.
But I just wanted to rectify that.
There you go. That's better. Yes.
Again,
Not necessarily a mitzvah, but allowed. Not necessarily.
if I'm looking at this chart correctly,
Yeah.
Simeon and Shaul, are they married?
Who's Shaul?
Shaul.
Shaul.
Where's
sorry.
Shaul?
Shaul.
Under
Under
Shimon.
Simeon.
I see. Shaul ben Knaanit. So
But then it's
that's
like-
what the Torah says.
But
that
then
there
there's Simeon, and then there's like what's going on here? I don't know if I'm like misreading it or misinterpreting it. There's like Simeon one, then another
there's
Simeon,
two Simeons, right.
and they both make Shaul.
So as I was saying, that what the Torah is describing us to and tells us story after story after story, but the greatest danger for the Jewish people, and that was for them to assimilate into the neighboring tribes, into the neighboring lineage charts, right?
Mhm.
We talked about the Ham and Yefet and all the different nations. So Canaan was the biggest danger because they were in the land which where the Canaanites were. So the Torah says that Shimon had these 5 5 children. Yemuel, Yamin, Ohad, Yachin, Vitzochar. And he also had Shaul,
A Canaanite kid.
but Shaul was the son of a Canaanite. Shaul ben a Knaanite. And that's is mentioned by the Torah explicitly because obviously that's the few, like you have a dam and you see there's a little crack in it and some water trickling out. Oh, that's what the Torah is describing here. That here and there it was just too hard. You had to have, if you looked at the beginning of the first chart and you said, where are the women? Who did they marry? They have to have someone to marry if you want to have the next generation, even if the women are not the leadership, even if the women are not the names by which the entire tribe is called. The women are very significant. And here, a Canaanite woman was taken by Shimon, probably in addition to his other wife or whatever it is. And they had this son, Shaul. So
I appreciate the clarification
I have a question.
because I got very confused how 2 Shimons made a Shaul.
Right. It's the same Shimon. It's the same
you look
Shimon.
at the top
But
left
the question is, who did he
double
marry?
star there.
Ah, yes, I see that. Sorry.
I don't know why they put him as a separate person,
Sorry, it just confused me.
but it says
Thank
Shaul
you.
ben
More people
Aknani.
gonna name their kids Zebulon.
Zvulun is a nice name. Yeah.
So it says that a little research that all these nations formed after the Mabul, the flood, in Noah's generation. But-
Chart number 1. We saw the
Yeah.
big.
So does it say anywhere in
scattering.
any of our writings, what the world before the Mabul was like, the nations, the peoples before?
Chart number 1. Chart number 1 gives us the listing of pretty much the Torah gives us lists. It doesn't tell us too much about it. There are a few stories, and that goes back to the Parsha of Bereshit. The first 10 chapters of Bereshit tell us a few stories about their relationships. There's a few songs, ancient songs from Lemech and his wives, but there's not too much there.
So Lamech, Enoch, Yared, Mahalel.
Yeah.
Do they constitute nations or are they just individual peoples?
In the end, as you said correctly, according to the Torah's count, when Noah came, it's like a reset. Right, so that was all former generations. Because in the flood, everything was wiped out, except for Noah and his 3 children. And so the basically what you have in chart 1 is you have 2 Adams. In many ways, Noah is like the next Adam. He's like the founder of civilization after him. It all started from him. So we sort of there was many branches, but those 10 generations between Adam and Noah, they don't have a continuation as far as we can tell. It all comes from Noah.
Did Ephraim not have any children? Or are they just not listed?
Where are you looking?
Ephraim, Joseph's kid?
So look at Yosef. Yosef's on the right-hand side of table 3.
Yeah.
And we see that Yosef had 2 children named Menachem and Ephraim. Now, if you notice, there's something special about the first line, the Hebrew words. Where do you see the Hebrew words? There. Right, the names are translated into Hebrew only for
the tribes.
For the tribes. How many are there? Count the tribes, please.
Well, okay, if you want to count Yosef, there's really like 14.
How many? Count them. Reuven, let's start from the left and go to the right, okay? Left is Reuven. You see the Hebrew there? Next is Shimon, that's 2. Levi's 3. Yudah's 4.
14
Issachar's
counting
5.
Yosef.
Zvulun 6. Gad 7. Asher 8. Dan 9. Naphtali 10. Yosef 11. And Binyamin 12. So we have 12 tribes. What's going on, though, if you go 1 generation down, you see that Yosef's children also, there's 2 of them, and they both have the Hebrew, Menachem and Ephraim.
Because Levi isn't like a tribe in the same way that the others are.
Later on in history, why does that happen? What happens to the tribe of Levi, and why are they different?
Because they didn't get involved in the Egyptian society. They stayed back in Goshen and learned Torah.
There are a lot of traditions about Levi, but ultimately what I'm looking for right now in terms of describing what happens in terms of the 12 tribes, the tribe of Levi famously did not receive land. They did not receive a portion. When the land of Israel was apportioned to the 12 tribes, Levi was not included. They were the religious leaders. This happened after Har Sinai. It says that God told Moshe, take the tribe of Levi and make them priests.
That's right after the Chetanega.
Yeah, good. So
But also
if one second. So if the tribe of Levi gets taken out, we're left with
13.
11.
Cool.
We're left with 11, from 12 down to 11. So how are we going to fill that up? So, because 12 is a big number. We saw that on the previous chart. There's 12 children of Ishmael, 12 children of Avram's brother Nahor, right? That's the number. There's different numbering systems. To us, it's the decimal is obvious, but there's the base 6, and there's the Torah seems to be going on base 12 for some reason. 12 is a big number. That's the number of a great nation. One second, let me just finish the thought. So what do we do if 12 is down 1? Because the tribe of Levi gets a special status. You're not wrong. A special status primarily because they're the religious leadership and they don't have agriculture and they don't have a plot.
Kid in there.
You got to add someone. So who do you add?
Menachem.
What about Ephraim?
Well, we didn't want him to feel left out, so we took Yosef out of the equation and threw Ephraim.
Exactly. Yosef gets replaced by his 2 children.
Right.
And so Yosef is out, so we're down to 10. And then you have Menachem and Ephraim, his 2 children. We always have 12. So whenever the Torah is counting the 12 tribes, it's one system or the other. You're either taking out Yosef and putting in Menachem and Ephraim and taking out Levi. Or if you go with the originals, then you don't count Menachem and Ephraim. It's just Yosef counted as 1 tribe. So Yosef could be either 1 or 2, and Levi could either be there or not be there. But ultimately, we always have the number 12. Yes. Right. Now I'll take questions. Who was waiting longest? Moshe.
I was making a comment that I know that there are some groups in Africa that, because their languages have base 12 systems,
really,
they try to use that as proof that they're some lost tribes.
Ah, interesting.
Although base 12 counting systems appear all over the world.
Right.
Yeah,
I don't really think anymore.
I understand base 10 because we have 10 fingers and 10 toes. Do they have 12? I mean, where did they get that from?
Look. You have 12. If you use your thumb to count, you have 12 bones in your fingers.
Oh,
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Oh, that's cool. That could be an explanation. I didn't know that. Yeah, go ahead.
What happened to Yosef? You said that his 2 children replaced him almost. So what happened to him?
He died in Egypt before all the other brothers. It was a sad, tragic story. We're going to read about it in the next month. The Torah spends the longest time talking about Yosef and his brothers more than Avraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov put together.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
That's a good question.
Not really why, but what does it talk about? I guess. Well, I'll read it.
We're going to read it. It's coming up.
Yeah,
it's a good book. And we all discuss it.
I'm hyped for the parshas now.
I have a theory about why, but we'll talk to when we get to those parshas. We'll talk about it. Other questions about the chart? 70 children went down to Egypt. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, is this where the chart ends? Or can we extend even further and further and further?
We can extend it.
We can extend the chart to you.
Yeah,
That's it.
you're here today.
That's it.
But I want to see it on the.
In terms of the stories in the Chumash, that's where it ends. But we do have some children of Moshe that are mentioned, and the children of all the tribes are listed again. Like these 70 nations are listed again at the end of the 40 years after the Exodus, with a little bit of a different division, but we don't have past Moshe. Moshe dies at the end of the 5 books of Moses. In the times of Yeshua, we don't have too much genealogical charts. We do have some record, and there's different cities where they conquered and where they lived, and we have records. But in terms of a complete sort of sequence, this is the foundational periods. 3 charts. Good.
Amazing.
How happy.
Great. So please take your folders and save them and memorize them. It's not in your head. Memorize. You're good. Okay, let's open up our Siddur. We have a few more minutes, but today's Wednesday, so I want to make sure that somebody is going to prepare Dvar Torah for us for tomorrow.
I volunteer as tribute.
You volunteer?
I volunteer as tribute.
As
It-
tribute.
It's a phrase from a movie. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
He volunteers.
Excellent.
I'll do it.
Great. Terrific. Okay, so you'll do tomorrow. What's the parsha?
Parshas
Let me
Vayetze.
see.
Excellent. Let's open up our Sidurim and take a look one more time at the.
Well, he stole my CD.
I
Let's look at another one.
got it myself.
We were looking at the Amidah
You want
yesterday.
paper?
Continue to talk about it today.
A lot of love.
Shot.
It's pretty amazing that there are 5 guys listening to us live. I don't know who you are.
Have they made any comments?
No comment. I can't see the comments.
From
So
the-
wait, now can I? Is it,
I will see if there are comments.
maybe.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
interesting.
you think?
You may be a celebrity of some sort.
He
now.
said, he said I'm watching the class.
We were at what, Hashiva? No.
Somebody left
Oh,
because I mentioned that they're there. Maybe they're afraid. But okay, where did we leave off yesterday?
I think we were at the. I think we had just finished Hashiva.
Exactly. We're about page 184.
So
If everybody could open up page 184. Vela Malshinim. Vela Malshinim. Other versions start off with the word laminim. What's a min or what's a malshin?
it's an informer or a slander.
So a malshin is a slanderer and a min is a heretic. That's maybe a little clearer about what this is about.
It's really against Christians.
Christians and other sects that popped up around the time of the Second Temple, that the rabbis wanted to make sure they don't intermingle, they don't mix, like the church we just saw that they were trying to create a special nation. It's got to have separation. So here too, the rabbis were definitely fighting against some enemies here that they wanted to be cut down. The Talmud tells a story. Who composed this prayer?
Rav, hang on, it's in Brachot. Rav, something Katan.
His name was Shmuel. Shmuel HaKatan. Very good. Very good. Shmuel HaKatan. Why was he called Katan?
He was very humble.
You're small.
Maybe he was just a shorty. But probably the Talmud says because he was humble. And they said nobody would trust.
ego.
Small ego, correct. Right, that's right. Nobody would trust themselves, and the rabbis could trust no one to create this blessing. They knew they needed a blessing because they were playing defense against these heretical groups and the people that were, trying to ruin Judaism in their eyes. But the rabbis felt we can't put a blessing into the Amidah that's just going to be in any way tainted.
With any animosity towards them.
Or any animosity which is not purely motivated, right? There might be some, some personal. When you're fighting, you get really hepped up, and you get drawn into the fight itself. And the rabbis therefore searched for someone who was so humble that when he composed the prayer, really motivated for the sake of God's name. And this fellow Shmuel HaKatan apparently composed this prayer, and we put it into our prayers. That's why it's not 18 blessings, but 19 blessings. This is the extra one that was added. And we bless Hashem who destroys enemies and humbles the arrogant. The flip side of that coin, same coin, is the next blessing. Why was it added in here? If you're going to tack on an extra blessing, put it at the end. No, you can't put it at the end. We have a structure. We spoke about the places we bow, the first blessing, the last
It
blessing.
makes sense. First, give us some judges who can destroy our informers, and then let the righteous come and sanctify them.
Yes, I agree with you that there's a sequence here. The way I was describing it more was comparing and contrasting down with the bad guys in the slanderers, and up with the tzaddikim and the chassidim, and then the righteous, the prayer for the righteous, the bottom page 184. Righteous, the pious, the elders of the people of the house of Israel, the remnant of their scholars.
Yeah.
This is the chain of tradition against which the people were attacking in the Second Temple period, and that's who we want to swiftly uproot, crush, and cast down, right? And humble the arrogant. These are the people who are not. And so the tzaddikim is like as opposed to those bad guys, let the righteous win. Don't we all want the good guys to win? So that's what this is. This is about the good guys. I will just point out that together with the good guys, we have the righteous converts. Really a very high, prominent place. And right after the righteous converts, we say, and to us. Ask God to give us your compassion.
The idea
together
there
with
is also a level of humbleness. We're requesting, but not on our merits, not on the righteous converts' merits, not on one set of merits alone. First, we talk about the tzaddikim, then about the Talmid Chachamim, then about the converts, then finally upon ourselves, because we don't want to be judged, we just want to receive.
Nice. I like that. There is definitely a feeling of humility that you get in this blessing. I'm looking at the blessing for the righteous on page 184 in the last paragraph. It says, grant a good reward. You see the last 3 lines? Grant a good reward to all who sincerely trust in your name and set our lot with them. In other words, we're not saying we trust in your name explicitly. Obviously we do. What are we praying for? Well, obviously we're putting our trust in Hashem. But we say it that there are those who trust in Hashem, and we even ask, please set our lot with them. Right. Strengthen my faith. If you want to have a prayer to strengthen your faith, it's right here. We're asking Hashem, help us have trust in you, like those great tzaddikim that do. So this is, and ultimately, for in you we trust. We do declare our faith. We do declare our trust in God. But it also comes with a prayer that we strengthen our faith. And blessed are you, Lord, who support and trust of the righteous. So we want to, you can see actually at the bottom of the page, there's a comment by the editor here, based on Rav Kook's explanation. Who can read it for us at the bottom of the page? This additional blessing, page 185 at the bottom.
This additional blessing, perhaps a euphemism directed against sectarians, brings up the number of blessings in the Amidah prayer from the original 18 to 19. Today, Shemona Esrei, or 18, is an anachronism. It was composed by Shmuel HaKatan, Samuel the Small. It is surely no coincidence that the maxim attributed to him in Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers 4:24, is the verse, if your enemy falls, do not rejoice, Proverbs 24:17. Only one totally free of malice towards Israel's internal enemies is worthy of instituting a prayer to the Almighty that they uprooted.
Amazing. So Rav Kook writes about this a lot, that about the internal fighting. Right? He was attacked a lot. Rav Kook was somehow he is like a lightning rod for disputes and arguments, and therefore he realized how terrible it is. He tried not as much as possible not to get involved in that. He did his thing. He didn't back down. He did what he believed, but he knew that there was a lot of infighting, and throughout our history is a lot of infighting. And Rav Kook saying you cannot have malice toward your internal enemies if you want to be worthy of instituting a prayer. And so he was trying as much as possible to stress that this idea to be above and not to deteriorate into infighting. So that's why Rav Kook really stressed this idea that Shmuel HaKatan only could make a prayer against, essentially it's against fellow Jews. I know we're coming up soon to the next holiday. What's the next holiday? Hanukkah. Hanukkah, people don't realize this. Who did we fight against?
Maccabees. I mean,
Romans.
Greeks. We fought an asynchronous guerrilla war against the Seleucid Greek Empire.
Good. So we have some learning to do before we get to Hanukkah. With all those different answers,
Bad guys. We fought against the bad guys.
That's it. Definitely, it's like every Jewish
Fought
holiday.
against the heretics.
So that's I think what a lot of people don't realize. Ultimately,
a lot of the Jews there were not integrated into the Greek society.
Good. What we tell our grandchildren and our children is that it's us against them. The good guys against the bad guys. The good guys were the Jews, and the bad guys were the Greeks, and it's true. But ultimately, when Hanukkah actually came to pass, this was after 100 or so more years of a lot of assimilation, and Hellenistic Greeks influenced a lot of the Jews to become Hellenistic as well. Hellenistic means Greek culture,
Right.
and so in many ways, the Hanukkah story, ultimately the Greek army came to back up the Greek leadership, and so of course the Maccabees were fighting against the Greeks. It was actually the Syrian Greeks. You're absolutely right, not the Egyptian Greeks. Right, the Seleucid means that they were the Greek Empire, the part of the Greek Empire that was controlling Syria and the northern part of the Middle East, as opposed to the first 150 years that the Greeks were in charge of the land of Israel. It was the Ptolemaic
There was Alexander the
dynasty.
Great.
Yeah.
3 children of Alexander the Great.
And
Ptolemy,
he liked the Jews.
Seleucid, what's his name in English? Seleucus is called in Hebrew. Seleucus in Hebrew, the Seleucid dynasty. There were 3 generals who took over for Alexander the Great, and the 2 that were fighting over the land of Israel the first 150 years. The Egyptian Greeks, they were actually quite nice to us, and that
That's why
was
the name Alexander became a Jewish name.
That's right. That's right. There was a lot of even fruitful discussions between the rabbis and the Greek philosophers. Described, but then it turned sour when the Seleucid, those Syrian Greeks, they took over the land of Israel. We call today the land of Israel, and they were not as nice. They were definitely persecuting us, and we had to fight back. But so by that time, though, a lot of the people that were together with the Seleucid Greeks were essentially what we would call today assimilated Jews, and essentially Hanukkah was a civil war.
Yeah.
As much, at least culturally, as much as it was a war against the Greek Empire. So it's a more
Greek Empire and all its cultural elements.
Absolutely, primarily it was a religious war, more so than a political war. Ultimately, the 2 go together. And when we did win the war, the Hasmoneans created a kingdom, even though they were from the tribe of Levi. They were Kohanim.
That's right.
Judah's supposed to be the kings, so they're actually criticized by the rabbis for creating this. We were happy that there's a Jewish leader, as opposed to no independence. But so we gained our independence after the Hanukkah story. But it was not the ideal situation of a Jewish king, the way it should have been from the tribe of Judah. The tribe of Levi came up, and the Kohanim became the kings, which was a little bit.
Maybe?
Not a question of corruption. It's just not the ideal situation that the Torah paints. Is that these different tribes have their different qualities and their different functions. In any case, that's why I mention it here, because this story against the informers and the tzaddikim against the informers, essentially it reminds us of the Hanukkah story. And it was a little bit of a civil war between the different groups of Jews. And that's what Rav Kook is saying. You have to be so careful. You have to be so careful. Sometimes you have to defend the faith, and you have to stand up for what you think is right. If I try to update it now with the danger that this will be the end of the class, we have debates now, arguments against other groups in Judaism.
That we might need to throw into that bracha.
We have to be very careful when we are fighting them, even though we're not going to back down. We believe that the truth of Judaism, the Orthodox tradition, is what we call Torah true. Is this phrase that's thrown around, and those other groups, we don't think that they are legitimate interpretations of Judaism. But we've got to be very careful, because they're Jews. They're Jews. They're also Jews, and some of them are our parents, our sisters and brothers, who are connected to those other movements in Judaism, and we've got to be very, very careful. That's what this story here about the bracha against the slanderers, against the heretics. Only Shmuel HaKatan, only somebody very humble and very purely motivated should be involved in this type of internal infighting, because otherwise, really, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Literally and figuratively, yes. Hirsch.
So I want to, regarding the Reform Jews, there's something interesting I've noticed. There's 2 different methods I've seen where we either can talk them in a way with like a manner of love, and try to kind of convince them to embrace tradition without alienating them,
Mhm.
or the whole thing was saying you're not really Jewish, you gotta go all
Yeah.
these things, alienating them, which does the exact opposite of them embracing Baal Teshuvah,
Yeah.
and they don't embrace tradition. So I think if we want them to actually embrace tradition, the assimilate roots, whatever you want to call it, alienating them is not the best way to go about it. I disagree with them.
Right.
Reform was a response to anti-Semitism, trying to assimilate to avoid anti-Semitism, and it was a byproduct of Haskalah.
So is Orthodoxy, by the way.
Their question.
Oh no! I'm
It's
making
okay.
statements.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
You're saying good things. You're absolutely
But
right.
I don't think
That,
we should be alienating them.
whether or not we agree with them is one
I
question, and then the tactics of how to approach them and how to deal with them is another question, which I agree. Well said. I want to finish off the blessings of the petition. One more page with you, please. That's all we have left. Page 186. We have a few minutes before the end of the class. Please look with me at the last three blessings of the petitionary blessings, and tomorrow we'll do the concluding blessings of the Amidah. What are they about?
Rebuilding Jerusalem,
Building Jerusalem,
Kingdom of David,
Kingdom of David,
and response to prayer.
response to prayer. Now there is a theory that the one about Jerusalem and the Kingdom of David were at one point together, or even switched. As you can see that the Veli Yerushalayim blessing starts with a Vav, which is rare. It could be it's because it came right on the heels of the Etzemach David blessing. We don't know exactly. It's been a long history.
But it also.
But what's the theme of these two blessings? Without leaving the last one aside for a moment, building Jerusalem, Kingdom of David, they go together. It's the future redemption, and the temple will be built. The throne of David means the Davidic reign. The Kingdom of David is who's the offshoot of your servant David?
Mashiach.
That's right, Mashiach. These are all phrases for the Mashiach, and it says, "May it soon flower." So it's sort of like an organic growth being described here, and we believe that we are in the process of Mashiach, maybe in the days of Mashiach. Although the one final king or Davidic, a leader from the Davidic line will one day show up, but ultimately we believe that there's a process to get there, and we don't know how it's going to look like precisely, but we're praying for the future redemption right here. May blessed are you, Lord, who makes the glory of salvation flourish. So this matzmiach, it appears 3 times in that blessing, that this type of growth, matzmiach keren Yeshua, makes the glory of salvation flourish, flourishing and flowering, and the offshoot it's all of a plant metaphor, and so there's something that has to grow here for us to reach the ultimate redemption. Okay, the last blessing is Shema Kolenu, Shema Kolenu, and as you can see, the title tells us that it is about everything above. It's sort of like,
It's a summary. It's saying we just prayed for a bunch of stuff. Now please listen to it.
Did you ever been to, if you remember that far back, a birthday party with little kids? So in Israel, there's a custom that every kid, you go around the circle, and every kid gives a blessing to the birthday boy. It's so cute, that little kid. So, I bless you that you should have a toy car. And the other kid says, I bless you that your sister should be nice to you. Whatever. Everybody says.
Birthday's in 3 days. Everyone is required to do this.
Oh, excellent.
This Shabbat on my birthday, everyone is required to do this.
I'm sorry, but I'm not going to be here for Shabbat.
Well,
I'm out.
before Shabbat.
We bless you right now, Moshe. And we bless you that you should have a red car. And
I hope you have a fire truck.
that's right. Bless you with the fire truck.
And we
Everybody
hope your
says
sister will be nice to you.
Maybe a dinosaur on the side too.
It's very cute when the religious kids, some bless. I bless you that you should merit to go to the Beit Hamikdash. Very religious kids. They're trained very well. This is what we hope for. This is what we pray for. And then the last kid in line, what does he say?
This prayer.
What do you mean?
He says, I hope everything comes true.
Exactly. He says, I hope all the other previous blessings comes true. So this blessing is a little bit like that. It says, please Hashem, we just asked for X, Y, Z. Right? We went through 12 different
That's a little
petitioners.
bit like this blessing.
Okay, so please hear our prayers and listen to us. and heed our prayers, and together with the prayers of all the people of Israel. And this is sort of the last one of the petitionary blessings. So it makes sense that it's here, even though we're not finished yet. This Shemona Esrei, we still have the 3 concluding blessings.
But this is the last of the
Last
asking.
of the asking, exactly. And that's what I'm showing you. The next one we'll do tomorrow starts the conclusion of the Shemona Esrei, the last 3. As we said earlier, on Shabbat, we don't have petitionary. The middle 13 gets replaced with 1 about Shabbat, Mekadesh Shabbat. And on festivals also. The 7, the 19 turns into 7 because the 13 turn into 1.
Because you're not supposed to ask for stuff on Shabbat.
Good. But those first 3 and the last 3 remain constant. This is the way we approach God, and it's the way we conclude our session, our audience with the Lord. That's what we'll talk about B'ezrat Hashem tomorrow. Stop here. Okay.
That was a hype class. I liked that.
Thank you so much.